Hello, in this video we're going to start looking at create character and login with OWS, and we're going to be using custom characters for this episode. So basically OWS comes with some basic blueprints for a character, and we want to create some modular characters. So we want to be changing their appearance and we want to be able to log in with this new character, right? So what I'm going to do is I'll start with a demo as usual, and it's probably be easier to explain without, right? So in the previous episode, we've looked at logging in. So this was already covered in the previous episode. What we're going to be able to do now is select some characters. So you can see I've got a bunch of different characters here. Create a new one so you can select some different parameters, right? So different stuff. Give it some name, click create. Well, it looks like I already create that. And there's our new character. So you can see the appearance is synchronized. So from the create character, I send an API request to create one. I pass in the custom parameters with the appearance information that I want to create. It then closes the create character widget, loads up the select character widget, which again pulls from OWS for what characters does my account have. So this is one of them, and when I get this information I get the custom character data as well. Okay, so when I'm going to click login, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this information into the game instance. You should actually be pulling this information directly from OWS instead when you log in, but we can potentially cover that in the next one, right? So at the moment you can see I'm signing in, and there's my character. So this is the one that I've just created, right? And it's integrated with the OWS character with abilities. So that means I'm able to do all of the stuff that you were able to do before. So for example here, stand between the two enemies and press the key 4. So you can see it's got all of those abilities integrated. So everything seems to be working as expected. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And as usual, all the steps in order to achieve this can be found here. So I go through this like step by step on how to achieve this. Bear in mind there are some prerequisites. So one of the popular ones is basically how do you deal with the complex nested options. So those are covered here. This post is specifically looking at how to deal with that custom data and OWS. So how do you transfer it to OWS and how do you fetch that data back? So yeah, let's get started. So perhaps the first thing that we'll look at is the create character widget, because before we can select a character, we just want to create one first, right? So let's look inside there. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the widget itself because that's covered in different episodes. So again, I'm assuming you have your own create character screen that you want to integrate with OWS. So in that case, this will be quite useful. If you need to create this screen as well, then you might need to check the other posts first. Okay, so we're going to specifically look into this on clicked logic for create. And here, basically, before I dive into these blueprints, we'll want to first explore what it is that we're calling from OWS. So basically, we get our player controller. So you can see it's cast to OWS login player controller. And we want to call this a function called create character. Okay, so in general, this is the same as before, so you should already have this function that exists. But inside here, what I've done is I've also added this new parameter. So it's a tmap of string and string, so it will contain character appearance. And this is effectively going to be the custom data that we'll insert along with a character. Now, bear in mind, it doesn't have to be just appearance information, right? This custom data could be whatever you like, really, just any data associated to that character. But at the moment, it's just going to be character appearance data, basically. Okay, so this exists as part of the OWS player controller. And what we do is get this OWS player controller component and execute this create character. So inside here as well, I had to also add this character appearance variable. And then we can have a quick look into its implementation. So this is the implementation. And again, this is part of OWS player character component, player controller component. And yeah, we call this create character. And what we want to do essentially is not process the character appearance right away, because first you want to create the character. And the actual create character API call doesn't support us adding this appearance information. So what we actually do is create character, wait for a response, make sure it's successful, and then if it's successful, then we create this custom data. So we store this appearance information in a variable. So it's a private variable that I just added at the bottom here. So it's right over there. And we basically wait until we get a successful response, right? So when we call create character, you can see it's bound to this response received. And if it was successful, then we're going to call this new method to configure appearance for new character. So this is a small function that I've created in order to iterate over this new character appearance and then basically create a new custom parameter for the character, right? So again, we didn't have a function to batch create this custom data. We needed to insert it one by one. So this is another small limitation where, you know, if you have 5 or 10 custom parameters, you're going to need to make 5 or 10 API calls, right? So there isn't a one batch insert. So this would be a nice optimization to do in the near future. But for proof of concept, this is fine. Again, one other weird thing that could happen, for example, is you create your character, that's successful, then you start creating this custom data and your API for custom data fail. So you're going to have some weird errors probably on your character where, you know, some of the appearance information is just not populated and it's probably not going to really be able to resolve itself. So this is why you want to sort of merge that into the one call so that it's part of one transaction and then you roll it back if it fails. But for MVPs and stuff, you know, it should be fine. It wouldn't error too often, hopefully. So, you know, but obviously if you want to roll this out to production, you'll want to address these kinds of issues. Okay, anyway, so now basically we edited the create character call and we're now adding this custom character data when we receive it, right? So this is what executes it. To be honest, at the moment, I'm not even looking for the response of this. It doesn't really matter at this point because I just have to assume that it's successful, but I do monitor whether my create character call is successful. Okay, so let's go back to the blueprints. So that's how we create the character, and these are all of the inputs that we require. So there's the OWS login player controller. So we're executing create character from here. It requires the user session UID. So this is actually part of the player controller. We then have to provide the character name that you have on your create character screen. The class name I haven't modified, so you know I could quite easily feed this in as well. I'll do that a bit later because I'm more focused on the appearance data at the moment. And here's my appearance information. It's inside this map of strings, which is called custom data. And yeah, let's have a look at this now. So let's see how we actually get this data. So when we click create, we get our text box, so this edit box character name. So we get the text from that edit box and we convert that text to string. So that gives us our character name. We do some basic validation just to make sure that there's at least 4 characters in there. And if there is, we want to get the map of appearance data. So this does some fancy stuff. It's not really anything complex. It might look complicated, but it really isn't. What we do is inside our create character screen, we have a custom structure which contains character appearance information. So we have things like race, gender, hairstyle, hair color, etc. So these are effectively our keys. And then it contains the values, right? So we basically convert this structure to a map of strings, right? So you can see here's key is race, and then I get the race field out of there, and I put it inside there. Then there's the gender, and again, I take the gender value and I put it in there. Hairstyle goes into hairstyle, etc. So once I've gone through each one of those parameters and I put them in a map, I can then return this node. And that's done, right? So that's me getting the map of appearance data that I had in my structure. So let's go back. Okay. I'm lost. Okay, so there's me getting my map of appearance data, so I set it in my custom data. I also added the character name part of this custom data. The reason I had to do that was because when you get custom data from OWS, it doesn't actually specify the character name for which you made the request for. And this is a little bit problematic when, you know, if I'm requesting character data or custom data for 10 different characters, they are async requests, so I'm not sure which one's which when they come back in my blueprints. So I need something in the response to associate that custom data to the character. So in order to just sort of work around that, I've added the character name into the payload of custom character data, and then I can make that association when I get that response. Okay, and that's basically it. So I just made a note about why I've specified the character name. So there's me calling create character, and now I have to wait for the response from create character. Now the response will come back to the OWS player controller, so we can have a look at that now. So let's open up the player controller. So I've tried to split them up, so there's create character events, so it should be around here. So so there's the two events that I can expect. One of them is a successful event notify create character, and the other one is an error, right? So this is also why it's useful to split your graphs up so that you can, you know, quickly find the logic you're looking for. Okay, so there's notify create character. I'm not actually interested in the response right now, but what I need to do is basically close my create character widget and then navigate back to select character. So that's what this is doing. I created a function to get create character widget. It just gets all widgets by class, and then if it found this create character widget, then I return it, right? So that's what this one does, and I've used it in a few places, like here as well. And yeah, I just removed the create character widget from viewport, and then I create the select character widget, and then I add that to the viewport instead. If I had an error, I get the create character widget, and then I create an error message in which I populate the error message that I get from OWS. And the reason why I get the create character widget is to disable it while I show the error message to the user. Now, it would have been a little bit simpler if I made the call inside the create character widget and then, you know, I dealt with these responses there. But, you know, this will work fine as well. If we separate the logic, it's all good. And that's basically it. So now what we have is a fully working flow of creating a character. So now we can start looking into select character screen. Okay, so in the select character widget, this is the design, and again, I'm not going to be looking to go over the design in this post, but I'm going to instead assume that you've already got your own select character widgets in place. But what we are going to look at is the integration of it with OWS. So specifically, we want to pull the character data from OWS and then get the custom character data as well for you to render whatever you like on the screen, right? So yeah, let's start looking into that. So yeah, so part of the flow is we'll look at the very beginning. So the event construct, we're going to spawn the character mesh, which will represent our character, and then we want to start fetching the available characters. Now, by default, this will not be visible at the very beginning. So part of the fetch available characters flow, what we want to do is get our player controller. So this player controller actually has OWS login player controller as base. So we know it has the functionality to get all the characters. And this binding of event, I'm going to look into that shortly, but basically I want to process the responses in this blueprint, not inside the player controller, right? So this is just to keep things a little bit neater here. And I basically get this player controller, and then I activate to get all characters. Now this is the C++ method, which I have not modified. So this is get all characters. And when this method is called, I expect to get some responses. And let's see how they're handled over here. So this is the player controller that I have. And inside the player controller, let's see, create character event. So this should be get character flow, yeah. So I should expect an event, notify get all characters, right? So once my request is processed, I'm either going to get a successful or an error message, right? So if I get an error, I'm just going to log this to the screen. This is not expected. It's not handled at the moment either. But if I get all characters and it is successful, what I want to do is fetch custom data for each one of those characters, right? So that's what I do. I have a for each loop, and I take in the user characters that I get back, and then I get custom character data for each one of those users, right? So this is called from the OWS player controller component, and I have to feed in the character name, right? So I have the character name part of the user characters there. So I have to basically say get custom character data for each one of those characters, right? So let's look inside here. I did have to make a little modification somewhere, I believe. So let's try and find it. So get custom character data, the function itself has not been modified, but what I needed to do is expose this data part of my player controller. So it's going to be part of the connections. So here I have to process the request, and the response will come into here. So if it was successful, I make this on notify get custom character delegate. So I'm going to go inside the player controller. So inside here, this is where I bind the object to notify get custom character data. So now let's look for that. And here, I think this is probably where the changes have been made. So the first thing to bear in mind is that I added an if this is not null check. So the reason for this is because our OWS character is not instantiated. We don't have a UE server running. So you're going to get a null pointer exception if you try and execute this at this point. And instead, I've basically extracted this information from processing the cosmetic data. So I think if you search for this now, you're going to find this logic part of on get cosmetic custom character data response received. Now, I basically extracted this method over here, right? So it looks to be deprecated, and I think probably in the current version of the template it's already removed. But for the time being, again, like this is for MVP purposes, I want to just extract this method. So I basically tied it together as well as reusing notify get cosmetic custom character data, right? So this method over here is already referenced inside the OWS player controller header file. So it's a blueprint implementable event. So I didn't have to do anything else here. So I'm trying to make minimal changes here so that it's like easier to follow. This is not necessarily production ready code, I would say, but it is good enough to prove a concept, if you will. Okay, so there's me calling get custom character data for multiple characters. So if I have 5 characters, I'm going to call this 5 times. So I expect to get this response 5 times as well. Okay, so there's the notify get cosmetic character data. And this is where I've created a delegate. So I don't want to process this character data inside the player controller. I want to have my widget process this data, because that's where I've already created a lot of my logic for processing it. So I just want to reuse a lot of what I've already done, basically, right? So in order to create one of these event dispatchers, what you want to do is find these event dispatchers at the bottom left over here. Click a plus sign and just give it some name. So let's literally call it some name. And then you want to give it a parameter, because we do actually have some payload to pass back. So, you know, let's call this payload, and we'll keep the type as string as well. So you'll want to compile this, and then let's go back to select character widget. And basically, you might need to compile this as well. Basically, from here, you want to then bind some name, and this is where you want to create the event. Oops. Okay. I'm not sure what just happened there, but it'll be fine. This is one of the advantages of running it from your Visual Studio, by the way. But anyway, basically this is how you combine an event, and then you've got the payload, and then you do some sort of processing with it, right? So we don't actually need this, but that's how I went and created and bound this event dispatcher. Okay, so I can go ahead and remove this. And okay, so when I get this event, so this is event notify get cosmetic custom character data. This event contains an array of custom character data. So this is effectively a map of keys and values, right? And this map of data represents our character appearance. So I need to go ahead and process that into my structure. So that's what I'm going to do next. So you can see there's me binding the event. It will basically reroute them to this event over here. So you can see there's my custom character data array. And then I'm going to start processing this custom character data and converting them to an appearance information info struct. And then I actually create an account character struct which contains the appearance information. So just for context, appearance. So this is my character appearance structure, and also my account character. You can see my account character contains this character appearance, this appearance info. So that's what I need to process, and that's what I'm doing. Now I've created a separate blueprint utility class for this. So let me find it. So character creation. Character action. I put it inside the utility class. So it's a process custom appearance. So I'll give it a different name. But at the moment, I've just created it as a blueprint function library so that I can start reusing this function in other places as well. Because at the moment, I'm dealing with this inside this widget, but actually when I log in with my character as well, I'm again going to be pulling this custom character data and then processing it in the exact same way, right? So I want to reuse that blueprints. I haven't actually created the second function yet, but I know I will need it anyway, right? So that's why it's better to put it into a different place. Okay, so process custom character data, you get the array, and for each item inside the array, you break it up. So this is where I say it has the field name and field value. So it's just a key value pair. So it's just a map of data. So for each one of those, I want to go and populate my appearance information. Now, one of those fields is a character name, and this is how I associate this response to a particular character, right? So I create a count character structure, and I populate the name from the field value, right? And this is a switch statement, right? So my selection is on the custom field name. If it's character name, do this. If it's race, do that, etc. Default is basically an error. So at the moment we haven't got anything that we don't deal with. So if we get something come in here, it's not expected. But potentially this might be expected. You just don't care about populating it in this payload, right? Like you just might want to ignore it. So that's completely fine. And basically when you've done, so when you've finished iterating over each one of these data pieces, you want to just simply return the account character which contains the appearance information. So that's it for this function. So let's go back to the widget. So this is assuming now we've populated the account character. So we add it into the list of account characters on the screen. So like I say, if we have 5 characters, we should expect this to be called 5 times. And each time we're just going to assume it might be the last one. So I basically say redraw the select option. So if we have 5 characters, it will actually redraw the options 5 times, which is not particularly efficient, but it's fine because, you know, it's not 1,000 times. It's not like a few hundred times. And it should happen pretty quickly anyway. So Yeah, that's how we basically get the account characters. And you saw that we get the character data in one request, and then we get the custom character data in a subsequent request. And we actually bind off the second one, which is getting the custom character data, because that actually contains all the information we need for this particular screen. Okay, and that's actually it in terms of select character screen. Let me just check. Yeah, that's it for this particular screen. And the next thing that we might want to do is look at the login button. And what we do is basically, there's one thing I've done is add the appearance information to my game instance. And this is because I haven't created a custom logic to pull custom character data on my character when I log in. So I'm just going to store this data in the game instance for now. And that's how you do it. Basically, you get the game instance. I get my account character from here, and then I set the account character inside the game instance. So this does mean you have to add account character field to your game instance, which I believe should be in here somewhere. So third person game instance. So there's my account character. And this one contains the appearance information. So that's how I've done it. You don't have to do this. Again, this is kind of like a short-term workaround, but it can work, like I say, for short-term, right? So I set the account character that I already preloaded now, because when I click the button to select a character, I will override this selected account character. I create the loading screen, I add that to the viewport, and then I execute login with selected character. So again, this is the function here, selected character. So I have to provide a selected character here and connect the last zone. So this is from OWS. This was part of the login widget that was part of the plugin, so I'll just reuse that. And this basically spins up the service or the server and logs you in. Now, the last thing that we'll look at is the character, on how it synchronizes its appearance with the game instance. Okay, so if I go back to here, I'm going to load up my character. So what I have is a player controller. Now, importantly, what you want to do is reparent it, right? So you can see that my parent class is the third person character with abilities. And that way I get all of the blueprints from this parent class, right? So this is super useful if you're waiting for some updates from OWS and they changed the third person character with abilities. You just need to either reparent this or update that parent class, and then you're basically going to inherit all of those updates. If you were to make all of your changes directly on that class, it could make those updates a lot more difficult for you to process, right? So that's why making this the parent class should be better for later on, essentially, right? Okay, so you can see I actually started to process the custom character data, but I'll probably do that separately, like in a different post as well, because this one was already getting a bit too long, too big. Maybe I should have split it. But anyway, so let's go to the event graph. Inside here, what you need to just make sure is you have to call the parent begin play, because if you look inside the third person blueprints, the characters here, there's a lot of stuff that happens on begin play. So you need to make sure that all of this stuff is executed. So for example, you get regen on health, MP, etc. That's how you'll know it's not working if your parameters like your health bar or your mana or whatever is not going up. That's how you know there's some issues and you haven't called this begin play here. Okay, so let's go back to here. Let's look specifically at the constructor. So I've been using this, or I will do some different stuff a bit later, but for the time being, part of my construction, I need to set the appearance through the game instance. So again, this is when this blueprint is not used as a proxy. So when I'm using it as my character, I I want to set the appearance through the game instance. And all this does really is get the game instance, load up the account character. This account character contains the appearance information, and I set it locally onto this character, and I tell it to resolve the appearance, right? So resolve appearance meshes based on that custom character data. Now, what I'm going to do instead later is when this blueprint is constructed, I need to get this custom data from OWS, but that call has to be executed on the server, not the client. So, and then that data needs to be replicated on the client as well. And then once it's replicated and returned, I need to then call resolve all appearance. So that's what will need to happen. But for the time being, I just load it from the game instance, which is basically like your global variable sort of thing. And yeah, that's how we go on. So again, I'll finish off with a quick demo. So let's log in. So there's all my characters, and I can go ahead and create another one. So let's make a female this time, some different hair options. Let's put some stuff, and there's my character. And again, you saw me log into a newly created. I can pick one of these up instead, click login, and oh, it looks like there was an error actually. So I think I stopped the server. 1 second. So we do need to make sure that the server is running. I'll stop this and I'll restart it again. Yeah, so just any one of these characters. You can see it started up the server instance successfully now. And there it is. So there's my other character, and you can see these values are going up. So if they're not going up, then probably you haven't called the third person with abilities begin play function. And if they're going up, that should be fine. So you can see me able to execute these things as expected, these abilities. Okay, that's it for this episode. So good luck, and yeah, let me know if I've missed anything, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.